Welcome, everybody. Don't get rusty 2022. A great new year. So happy new year, everybody. We haven't seen you. I don't remember if we've done it from this location that I'm at now, but you'll notice it's a little different. Not as fun, but still, welcome. So this one is ice, maybe. Dun, 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 dun. We're going to talk about actually perfect time of year, right? So it's January, and for most of us in the northern states, we're either seeing tons of cold or tons of snow or both. So it's a good time to get started and get everyone up to date on what to remember when they're flying in this kind of weather and these conditions. So as always, this webinar is brought to you by our friends at Boeing. Jepson, ForeFlight, Boeing, there it is. Generously brought to you by, excuse me. Jepson,
right. Gotta be generous.
That's right, generous. There's no other way to do it but generously. So, and then we have a new slide for everyone here, which is the scholarships. And so one of the things that we're trying to, I guess, not doing new for this year, but we do have the scholarship foundation from the AOPA Foundation Scholarship Program. And so there are many scholarships available. Some would call it free money. I think that's the fancy word for scholarships.
This is money for flying. It's like a gift. It's a New Year's gift. Money for flying right there.
Falling from the clouds. Free money. Many different kinds of scholarships, but for the most part, suffice to say there's 80 high school, 80. Okay, we're trying to give these away. Please apply. We want you to have it. So there's 80 high school students, and bear in mind this is private pilot only. There are qualifications for all of these, so please don't just be like, oh, I'm applying. No, take a look, go to aopa.org/scholarships. Take a look. The high school student one is I think the one we have most of right now, but there's something out there for everybody. So you can even be an adult and go for this stuff. So,
and note down below though too that you mentioned there's the high school ones for the teachers and students. The one thing that's different this year, which is making it more challenging, is they do have to have their private pilot written test done.
Yep,
so that's making it a challenge. But down below there, notice there's also additional scholarships there for people doing other things, instrument ratings, CFI, all that. Check it out. So there's something for everybody. We got something for everybody, Pablo.
I mean, that's fantastic. I don't even know how else to cover that, right? Something for everybody, and I think more importantly, free money. So as we start 2022, our gift to you. Okay, so let's go over some of the basics that everyone knows already, which is the attendee control panel on the right side. There are several buttons. You can ask questions. Thank you. None of which are going to be verbal. So on the right side, there is a little icon, and that's where you can ask your questions, and then they will appear. They will be seen by everybody in the webinar, so somebody else might answer it, but most likely it'll be one of us. And oh, welcome back. Quick question. Yes, a bunch of stuff going already, so that's good. What will happen is during the webinar, I will throw in the question in my way, of course. Not everybody's will be thrown in during the webinar. Some will be in the Q&A segment at the end. So we'll go for 55 minutes approximately. We will transition to Q&A for no more than a half hour, and we'll try to get to everyone by then. If we don't get to, please don't be upset. Please come back and ask your question later, because we're here for you. So, and so there are questions coming in right now. So if someone says audio is not clear, Chris, Stephen, I think everybody can hear us pretty good. It might be on there.
Right. Yep.
Cool. All right, moving forward. Introductions. Most important part of it. My name is Pablo Morelia, Senior Director of Flight Training Technology. Although it's an impressive title, I'm just like you. I'm a pilot and enjoy what I do. So including this AFTA app, which is the AOPA Flight Training Advantage, hyped yet again for you. AOPA.org/AFTA. Moving on, let's talk to Chris. Chris, welcome to 2022.
Why, thank you, Pablo. Of course, I'm Chris Moser, and I am the Senior Director for Flight Training Education. I work on the same team as Pablo when working on AFTA and other things to help out schools and instructors, and I am a CFI. So I'll be happy to be here again. And I'll turn it back to you, Steve, or turn it back to you, Pablo, to introduce the renowned Stephen.
Let's say the man that's spinning the wheels of steel, the man behind the curtain, the man behind the black space. We like to call him Stephen. Stephen, say hello.
Hello.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so, as Chris always says, 2 million likes will show his face or maybe part of it. However,
the big reveal.
The big reveal. So keep on watching. We'll get there eventually.
Stephen, he may show his camera at some point. He was just in Hawaii on a personal trip, all that stuff, right? And he won first place in a 15K. I guess it's not, 15K race. So that's running.
Yeah.
It's crazy. See, there he is.
Yeah.
Had to plan that one perfectly. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Little plug for the Maui Oceanfront Marathon races in Maui, Hawaii. Lovely place.
Oh my goodness. So you can tell it's been a while since we've been together. We're happy to be here. So we'll get to the stuff. So bear with us, people. Bear with us. Okay. So one news slide we have this year is, hey, did we mention a little history for everyone out there? I know we're all aviation buffs. January 27, 1957, a couple of years ago, the last North American P-51 in squadron service. The key here. With the Air Force was retired from the 167th Fighter Bomber Squadron in West Virginia Air National Guard. So I did not put the picture up. It's pretty cool, though. It's next to some jets, and it looked kind of funny sitting there. But and there's the number if you'd like to see it and check it out, F51D25NA. And it is on display, by the way, Charleston, West Virginia. So just a little aviation history for you, a couple of buffs, you know what I mean? So let's begin this thing as we always do with a poll, Chris.
Let's do it.
Does cold weather affect flying?
Hey, Stephen, roll that poll. Yes. What do you think? Not at all. A little bit. Tons. So I can't fly at all. And I have no idea they're trying to trick me again.
Yeah.
That's the typical thing. So
we do that. We do that, and it's fun.
Kind of curious to see what people say. We've got lots of people voting, so you'll see that pop up. We'll give you just a moment to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Pablo? It affects me in the sense of having to get out in pre-flight. I'm a little, well, it's like, am I slower or faster? Definitely being cold slows me down, but then I also want to try to go faster so that I won't have to be out in the cold.
Well, the funny thing about it is, in some sense, it's actually it's even harder, like in terms of the mental pre-flight and the actual physical pre-flight. Like, for example, yesterday we had our coldest day of the year. Okay, we woke up in the morning, it was -14. The wind chill was -25. So in that case, if I had a 6 a.m. flight or something, there's a lot more that goes into it, right? I don't even think I'd go to the what's called the charts and everything yet, because I frankly, and we'll get to this, I don't even know if I can fly the plane that kind of cold, right? So we'll get to those things, and there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, it's not just weather anymore. There's more to it.
And we're not talking just fall weather here. We're talking that cold winter weather. All right, let's go ahead and look at the results of the poll. We've got about 78% of the people that voted. And look at this. The vast majority saying a little bit, and then a few saying tons, so I can't fly. I like the 2%. I have no idea.
Well, and that's right, and that's what we expect. If no one had answered that, I'd be like, liars. Okay, all right, let's go. So we'll talk about all those things coming up here. All right, so what's coming up, Chris?
All right, hold on. Where's it? I'm trying to click. There it goes. So what do we have coming up today? We're going to do, it's kind of a twofold thing. We thought would be useful to do sort of a winter weather webinar in this sense, to talk about how you get your information about winter weather conditions. And then after that, we're going to talk about some tips on how to operate in cold flying weather. Pablo, being located where he is, or positioned where he is up in our Chicago office, the Chicago desk, as it were, has had lots of experience flying in cold weather. And then, believe it or not, I had most of my experience flying in cold weather in Arizona. But it gets cold there. We get a lot of snow up in the high country.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah, the high country. Yeah. Okay,
let's get to it. All right.
Planning weather.
Yes, let's talk some other. So the first part is looking at the planning. And so one of the things we wanted to mention was that we are not supposed to go flying in known icing conditions. Obviously, it's like if your airplane's not certified for it, you're not supposed to be in it. A lot of aircraft manuals say not to do that. But the problem was the FAA had never really defined what that meant. And there was a letter of interpretation. And by the way, there is a handout today. And in the handout, I have an article that then links to this letter. If you want to read it, you're welcome to do so. So it's in the handout. I got a couple of links in there that I'll mention. And so to have known icing conditions, in this letter, the FAA kind of clarified that and obviously we already knew the weather conditions. It's got to be near zero because you can get icing even though the temperature is just above zero, because as long as the surface is at zero. Visible moisture. And then notice here, this is where this letter of interpretation kind of laid out some stuff. And there's a lot more in it. I just read it just earlier this morning. I read the entire thing again. And it says, if the composite information from weather products indicates that to a reasonable and prudent pilot that he or she will be operating in the aircraft under conditions that will cause ice to adhere to the aircraft along the proposed route and latitude of flight, then known icings could, so there's not a thing of like, there used to be a thing of known icing where it's like, it's already happened, we got pilot reports. This is saying if the conditions to a reasonable pilot would show that this could happen, that is considered known icing conditions. And so therefore, if your airplane is not certified for that, you should not be flying in it. Yes.
Mind blown, and thank you to Philip. We lost the slide, Chris. Our most important question. Our most important question of all.
Let's see what's going on.
FAA wings credit.
You're right.
So I apologize for stopping this where we are, but I'm going to hold it short here for a second. FAA wings credit is absolutely for this seminar, webinar. It's not there. And
not there.
No, part of the FAA's FAST team. And if you've registered and are here live is the key here, you will get FAA wings credit for it. This has nothing to do with the AOPA badge, okay? Two separate things, cohesively united. So no, you don't have to do
layers of ice.
Layers of ice, rhyme ice. So yes, that's one of the things we always mention. And geez, Philip, I apologize. You're right. It's not the same webinar without that mention. Wings credit is available. You will all get it based on your registration email if you're here live. Okay?
And that email has to be the one that you use for FAAsafety.gov. So
that's right.
If for some reason you didn't register with that one, then email us. What do we use, Stephen? FT Initiative?
FT Initiative at AOPA.org.
Yes, FT Initiative at AOPA.org. Maybe he'll throw it in the chat there.
Yeah.
And then
there are no other steps you have to do. I actually take care of grabbing the list and submitting it for everyone. So you don't have to have a code or anything. I take care of it at the end.
Cool. Yep. So you're saying it's not related to the passport,
which we'll get to later.
Yes. Okay. So another thing, our second most asked question: will this be available later? Yes, it will. So this is being recorded. We will put it out on both of our 3 channels. It'll be on the webinar channel. It'll also be on AOPA.org/webinars. And thirdly, it'll be on the YouTube channel for AOPA Live. So don't get rusty. Search for AOPA Live, go to that channel. Within that channel is our webinar. So you can see it there. Now, it usually takes at least 24 hours because I got to get everything in there. So, hit it as much as you like. It'll help numbers. However, it won't be there for at least another day or so. Okay, I apologize. Let's go back to it. And again, thank you, Philip.
Back to our scheduled programming.
Good God.
So we talked about known icing conditions, and I know we have some clarification from the FAA on that. So what we wanted to do was then talk about, well, where do we find out this information? We wanted to do a quick review. You probably are familiar with this, but it's always good to do the review again. And so one of the places that you'll see when you go to get your briefing is something like Airmet Zulu. And I always remember there's the Airmet Sierra, Tango, and Zulu. Sierra, I always remember the mountains, the Tango for turbulence. Zulu is for ice, think like 0, low temperatures, that sort of thing. I think there was an old movie. I don't even know if I've ever seen it, Ice Station Zulu. That's what some people remember this one. But the Airmet Zulu, it literally says right in there, it's for ice and freezing level, and it tells you when it's valid. And then right down here, and we're not going to get into all the little nitty gritty. We just wanted to show you specifically the parts for winter weather, and typically ice is our major issue. You'll see right here highlighted in red that it says the outlook is valid. It gives you the times, and then it says ice, and then it gives you the areas where it is. So this is Minnesota, Wisconsin, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Michigan, then Lake Huron, Illinois, and Indiana. Then it gives you all these boundaries. My gosh, this blows my mind. You have to then know where these places are. It's like 20 south of.
But do you have to know?
Well, if you want to use just this, you do, which is why. And let me just we'll ignore that for the time being. You do have to be familiar with these areas, and this is telling you that there's moderate ice between 3,000, always adding like 2 zeros onto the end of these, 3,000 and 12,000, and then it says the conditions developing after. I like to use this for me personally. I don't know about you, Pablo, but this is a clue of like, okay, there's icing conditions potentially out there. But to actually know where they are, the Airmet itself doesn't do me much good. I plot the thing out for me, show me on a map so I can see where my route is. That's the way I am, at least. I don't know about you, Pablo. You might be able to know all these different VORs.
Well, they are in my backyard, you know, and so I do recognize some of them. But I mean, suffice to say, this is ridiculous.
Because it's 60 west of YQT to 30 south.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead. So what I prefer to look at is the Graphical Airmet. I'm really happy that, you know, sometimes people talk about we've been dumbing down things in our culture or whatever, but man, throw me a picture. I'm way happier. It's way easier for me as a pilot, because I always tell my students and stuff, like, I didn't become a pilot to do work. It's like I'm trying to figure out the ways to make it easier for myself. And so this is great. What they'll do is they plot the thing out for you. And this is the kind of thing you would see in your briefing when you go to get it online. And then it tells you right there. Here it is, icing conditions. And if you're not sure, there's usually a legend somewhere around we are going to be pointing you towards. And this link that I'm about to mention is in the handout, aviationweather.gov. It's in the handout. It's the Aviation Weather website. That thing is amazing because you go find the products on there and you have a legend that'll pop up. Makes it a lot easier to interpret them.
Wait a second, hold on. A legend?
What?
Got it, sorry.
Yes, perfect, Pablo. Actually, they're probably looking for Amelia. She's more of a legend, I believe.
That's true. That's a good point.
It's probably true, yeah. So you can see right here, it shows you the boundaries of where it would be, and then it even tells you. We were just talking about why that symbol for icing. I'm not sure, you know, what that's supposed to be, but it is from surface to 15,000 exactly. But as you mentioned yesterday, Pablo has to have two heads and the two.
That's the alien freezing point. That's right.
And then we showed an example of what the legend would look like right here, and it gives you. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. So that's the basic deal. So I feel like the Graphical Airmet's a great place to look. Let's go ahead and take a look at another place. Now, I mentioned that website. Here it is, in fact, on the bottom there, and there is a link in the handouts to make it easy, so you don't have to worry about trying to write it down or hurry up. But aviationweather.gov, this is at G Airmet. This thing is awesome, these Graphical Airmets, because you can see, you can change the level, you can zoom in and out, you can even toggle, and that's what I did here. Because as you mentioned, when we had everything toggled, it was a little much. But you can toggle the different products. And so I did icing, freezing level, and IFR conditions, and you'll see.
And by the way, sorry. So Chris, the big thing is that level, right? So right here, this looks like there's no way I'm flying today. I mean, I'm not going to Frederick in that. But if you actually toggle that down to like 12,000, you know, you'll see that most of it goes away. There's a lot of surface to 15,000. Sure, there are those out there. But for most of us in the single engine pistons, that's really important there, because you'll notice those things that affect us. Now, granted, you should get the full picture, but you'll notice a lot of stuff is up for the commercial guys, you know. So, but what a great map. I mean, compared to that, Chris, go back to the previous one real quick.
Okay.
I mean,
and the cool thing about this one too is that there are the layers, right? It's the fact you can choose, and I can look at turbulence and that, look at high, low. It's a great product. Now, one thing I want to mention, if you're going to this aviationweather.gov website and using it, it is all the same products that you would see in a briefing. So it is the same stuff. This is where actually your briefing sources will get it. But please be aware that to get your quote unquote official briefing to count as your, part of getting all available information, you have to use, whether it's 1-800-WX-BRIEF or calling them and that sort of thing, or using the online website that they've got, or using ForeFlight or whatever it might be. You still need to use that, but I will often just go, if I'm just kind of getting an idea of what's happening, go to this website. This does not count as your official brief because they don't record the fact that you got a briefing. They don't do that. Which counts as with the legal part. But this thing's awesome. And you can see, the other thing I wanted to show is if you click on the area, it pops up and gives you the details about it. So this one literally showed that we did this yesterday. So it's got moderate icing. The base is at the freezing level, which is 2,000 feet to the surface, depending on where it is in that area, and then up to 9,000 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, simple.
So if you got 182, you're good at 11.
Yeah, as long as you climb through all that. You know, you mentioned that, Pablo, and I was just reading in Rod Machado's private, actually it was in his instrument handbook, that he was talking about, you know, that's not a good idea to climb through icing. Bad idea.
Yeah, no, not a good idea. And some would say descending through it too.
Yes, bad idea because you don't, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll get to the practical. All right, let's keep moving here. All right, so that's a great website. We'll come back to that a few times. What's another place you can get more information about icing and weather conditions, right? Your TAF and your METARs. So we got both on here, the TAF being your terminal aerodrome forecast, which is, it's an old word, aerodrome, isn't it? But
it is.
it's like,
that's Wright Brothers stuff. Yeah,
it is. So for the terminal aerodrome forecast, and again, our goal is not to review how to read a TAF or a METAR today, but mainly to focus on the icing. So we're assuming that hopefully you've got a base in this and you know how to read the basics of it. I will mention that if you are new at this and you're going on to things like whether it's 1-800-WX brief or ForeFlight or things like that, you know, an electronic flight bag, you can toggle the thing where it puts it into plain English. Just be aware of that. But let's focus on this. Here it is. Here are some of the things you're looking for in the codes. And so this is telling us that we're having SN is snow, and then snow showers, and then the minus means light. So light snow showers, that would be something to clue me in. If there's snow happening, that means we got visible moisture. If obviously it's probably below freezing or near freezing and below, so we could be getting ice on the airplane. Here, right here, this is bad stuff. You've got rain and snow, but it's freezing rain and snow. The FC is for freezing. So that is bad news too. You're going to get ice flying through that kind of stuff.
And let me just mention as well, like Chris said, we're not going to go into these because we actually did have a highly rated webinar based on the
multi-part, as I recall.
A multi-part on the meteorological terminal air report, which is what I like to call the METAR. Chris will tell you that. And so those are things that we covered back then. So that was a two-parter on that. So feel free to go back and look at that. It's not that we're not covering it. We've already covered it. Maybe we'll do it in the future again. But this is just to point out those significant weather forecasts related to cold weather flying in this time of year. So
icing on this, right? And one thing I will just reiterate, or not reiterate, I will say is that remember that I put these both on the same slide because they're very similar in the way that you read them, the things. But remember that a TAF is different than a METAR. The TAF is a forecast, normally for about 24 hours for most airports, and so that's a forecast. So in this case, the one thing I always try to keep in mind when I'm reading this is they think that on the first at 0320Z, they're forecasting. We predict that there'll be light snow showers and rain, and the same thing here. But when we go down to the next one, METAR, is this Midway, by the way, MDW?
It is.
Okay, just checking.
Well done. Yes.
See, I know something. I know something about the Midwest. It could just be Midwest, Midwest. So METARs are a report. This is what's already happened. So this is something that's happened. It's an hourly thing. Sometimes they can be updated depending on the significant weather more than once per hour. But the METARs tells you, like, at Midway, they've already had snow, and then here's freezing fog, the FC. And again, these codes, if you're not sure about, you can click the thing on and off. There's also, and this is one thing I forgot to put on the handout, I didn't think about this, there is a decoder. If you look up TAF METAR decoder, the FAA has one you can find that'll help you do this. But generally for most purposes, you could just toggle the plain text now on and off. It's really easy to do that. Okay. Do we have any questions about any of these, Pablo, so far as we're going, or we're pretty good?
Nothing yet. We're pretty good. Just remember, Chris already mentioned it, but the TAF is a forecast. It's the last letter. The METAR, or again, the Meteorological Terminal Air Report, as I like to call it, is a report of what's happening now. So forecast, report.
Or what has happened, within the past hour or so. Okay, cool. All right. Now, here's an interesting one that, I know that there's well, the reason I say this is interesting is because there's been a little bit of talk about this recently around AOPA. So something's coming out. I think somebody's working on an app, not here at AOPA, but that we were reviewing one for a company. So PIREPs are really, really valuable when it comes to this. And in fact, we discovered something else as we were prepping this past week. So we'll share that in just a moment. But let's go through a PIREP. So a PIREP obviously is when a pilot reports either to flight service. Sometimes you can do it with ATC if they're not too busy, they'll be willing to take it. or you can even call it in to flight service after your flight. And in this case, and it goes through the whole deal. And one thing I want to say about PIREPs, by the way, is that they can be, and we talked about these in our weather one, I know, but they can be scary, but they're actually, honestly, especially if you call flight service, they will literally walk you through what they want. They'll just tell you, what's this now, what's the next part? You don't need to memorize all these parts. But the critical parts of a PIREP right here are the temperature aloft. And so here we've got M, which means minus 12. That's well below freezing. In fact, I saw this morning coming up before I came into work today. We had minus 12 Celsius, just because I was looking at that too. And then you'll see right here, there is a section in a PIREP. If you report icing, they will put it down. And so in this case, there is icing, and it tells you it's light to moderate rime icing from 5,500 feet to 8,000 feet. That's what this pilot saw flying their BE-55, which it's a beach. I'm thinking 55. That's not a Baron. I don't think a 58 is a Baron, so I'm not sure which type that is. But
yeah. Now remember too, even though this looks like a TAF and a METAR and basically all other reports, it's still the Pirates report. The pilot report. So this is some dude flying around in a beach somewhere. Well, we know right there around Pittsburgh, Martinsburg, and he's reported something to Johnson Center.
Your favorite,
perhaps. And then they have put it into this so that it's known to other pilots, and you will see it on your EFBs, including a ForeFlight. You can see it there.
In fact, let's talk. I want to talk about that. Where do we get PIREPs? You're going to get them when you go to get your pre-flight briefing. They'll be in the briefing part of it, or if you call, they'll tell you about them. But one thing we discovered yesterday, which was really interesting, because I was wondering, I'm like, why is it ForeFlight somewhere? And I was checking under like the airports, and I didn't see it. Then I realized on your map view, and I'll mention ForeFlight, especially because they're one of our sponsors, and I'm sure if you're using Garmin Pilot or one of the other ones that they'll do it too. But you can actually, there's one of the things you can toggle for the displays on the map, and you can toggle on PIREPs, and then it shows it to you right on the map. So wherever the pilot reported it, they put it in that location, you can tap on it and it brings up the information. So I thought that was really cool. I didn't know that it did that. So pretty darn cool. And then, yeah, and see all those little, it's all the little green squares, right, Pablo? Is that what it was, or do you have it on there?
So hold on, there you go. So it's the blues.
There you go.
Like the Uno card with the skip next player.
Yes.
We're just playing that.
Probably the black ones too, I guess. All those little, like, they're almost like rectangles or squarish type things.
Yeah, yep. Exactly.
Very cool. And you tap on them and it brings up the details. I thought that was really, really cool. And talk about useful.
It's actually the guy with one head, not the alien two heads, but it's the same guy with the touchdown symbol. Yeah, and so it'll show you exactly there what it is. And this is Beach 36. A lot of beaches flying today. Okay.
That's super valuable, because talk about known icing. That's definite known icing. It's happening. It's happening to a pilot.
And talk about real time.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, this is some dude that's flying it, so there is no.
Yeah,
it's current.
That's good stuff. Now, this is back to that aviationweather.gov website, and in this case, we pulled up. This is a great tool. So we mentioned, it was back during the summer when we were doing weather. We mentioned the fact that area forecasts have gone away. The old textual one that a lot of us know, and this new tool on aviationweather.gov is the Graphical Forecast for Aviation. It's GFA. So on aviationweather.gov, the link's on the handout, you have to go under tools and then look for GFA. This thing is awesome. I was showing it to Pablo and Steven yesterday, and we were playing around with it. And you can see again here, you can change the altitude. The cool thing is you can even, right here, this button says show your flight path. I didn't do this in this picture here, but you can actually tell it where you're going to fly, and it'll plot it on the map for you so you can see it. And in this case, I toggled forecast, and then I selected icing, and it gives me the icing forecast where they thought it would be. And then what I also love about this website is whatever product you choose, it puts the legend on the bottom for you automatically, so you can tell what's going on. And so in this case, we can see the different shades of icing color right here depicted on the map. So right here in this area, that's heavy icing predicted over southeastern or southwestern Pennsylvania, and then it gets a little, into the moderate and light and everything else. Great tool. I mean, please go play with it. It's such a great tool. Very well,
and you can just see how user friendly they are now instead of those charts.
or plotting it out in your mind using the different waypoints.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, great tool. All right. Another place you're going to see weather information is, don't forget, you're going to see it on your low-level significant weather progs. Typically, this is a prognosis, so this is a forecast, what they think is going to happen. And in here, the legend, I think I pulled this off of aviationweather.gov, as I recall, and it's going to show you right here that the particular things like these blue areas. So the freezing level is what you're going to see. And so if you can see here, the blue dashed line is the freezing level, and it's telling you it's 8,000 feet here, where this line goes. And then this one above here is at 4,000 feet. So obviously it's going to be on sort of a descending scale. And then when you see the zigzag, that's telling you that it's going to be freezing at the surface. So this was yesterday, so you can tell it's pretty cool.
And I think more importantly from all these charts, know that they are for flight planning only.
That's right. And notice it says right here,
Yeah.
Pablo, I need to make a confession. I would sometimes look at these for when I was just going to go out and do stuff, like on my own, not flying. And now I realize that I can't do that anymore because I wasn't using it for flight planning. So
yeah, no, that's exactly right.
So I apologize everyone for that.
These are not for bike riding.
Yeah, I did use it for bike riding, and I will no longer do that. I will back off. Don't want to misuse my product.
No,
okay.
Don't do that.
All right. So then, very similar to the prog chart, which is a forecast what's coming in the future, you've got your surface analysis too. And again, you're going to find icing information here as well. Right here, it's this area where you're looking for these blobs of either like this ice and the, what is that, kind of an orangey yellow, orangey-ish, purple, and then the blue for snow. And you can see them right here. It's going to show you where they are currently seeing that. What was the chart we were talking about too? The one that, because there's a surface analysis and there was, the weather depiction chart. The weather depiction chart, while we still learn about it, I haven't seen it really anymore. So I'm kind of wondering if they kind of phased it out or they just aren't using it for aviation as much. But this is basically what takes the place of that. It's kind of showing you what the current conditions are across the country. So pretty straightforward. So all of these should give you a pretty good clue of what's happening. Where is this potential snow, ice going to happen, stuff we want to avoid. And for most of us flying GA, we're not flying airplanes that are certified for known icing, so it's going to be a no-go in those conditions. All right, so that's kind of a review of where you can find this information. What we wanted to give you then as well were some tips on things to think about if you're going to go flying in winter weather. And this is where I know that Pablo's got lots of experience. I know that he laughed at me, but my experience is in Arizona when I was flying freight. Yeah, I flew freight. I got myself. I was in a lot of winter weather.
No better.
Because in Arizona, when it gets down to like 60 degrees, we got to watch for stuff.
I mean, are you kidding me? 60? It's crazy.
It's cold. We used to tease in Arizona when I was flight instructing. There would be like one cloud in the sky. We called that Arizona IFR because everybody would freak. I can't. It's too many clouds because it's usually just blue. So anyway, all right. So let's talk about the pilot and plane checklist. So some things here we want to think about. And Pablo, this is one that you mentioned too. You want to talk a little bit about the developing, reviewing cold weather procedures. This is something you got experience with.
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically like yesterday, so there's a lot of things here. So it's either if you belong to a flight school club, there could be certain procedures and or rules with flying in this kind of weather. So personally, I could not have flown yesterday because we have a rule of -20. No go. That's cool. The whys, there could be many reasons, but I think for the most part, for us, it's some of the airplanes are parked outside. And so you can't just walk out to the plane and start it. It doesn't work that way, right? Because at least in terms of us, we also have some training. These planes, it's bad on the engines. There's no oil flowing through the system. It's thick. It's just not ready to go at -20. So I can't just go out there and start it. So we do have engine block heaters. It's all stuff we'll talk about shortly, but there's engine block heaters. So I could fly, but as a whole, the rule is no. Now, if you're a student, they won't let you fly, stuff like that. But what I could do, plug it in, pull it into the hangar, let it warm up for an hour or two. Who's got time for that? I mean, that's literally, it turns into a 4-hour flight to go in a half hour. So that's some of the reasons why they say just let's not even bother with it, right? There's very few people that are going to want to do that, specifically students and stuff. So those are the procedures there. Now, if you're owner of a plane, partnership into a plane, you're going to have different procedures for that. But most likely, if you're in a hangar, things will change dramatically, as long as they're plugged in. Some people just say, forget it, it's not worth it. It's too much on the engines. So those are some of the procedures. Going to personal minimums or no?
Well, actually, well, yeah, one of the things I just wanted to emphasize what you were saying too is it's like you're going to have places or organizations that are going to have those cold weather procedures, just like Pablo mentioned. If you don't, whether it's just because you have your own airplane or maybe your organization doesn't, it might be worthwhile to consider to dig into this a little bit to find out, because it's probably a good idea to have those procedures. And I even asked Pablo, I'm like, you have it, you're doing those because that's what your the place where you fly does, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, if
Yep.
you were to go on and get your own airplane, would you probably borrow a lot of this? And you kind of said, yeah, right. That's what I would do.
Hell yeah.
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 I know I did the same thing flying freight. I adopted a lot of the stuff that I learned flying for them for my own flying, because I'm like, well, I saw the reason and the safety behind it. So it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have any, talk to some folks that are experienced in it maybe and develop some. All right. Yes. Do you want to talk about this personal minimums? We have, by the way,
Yeah.
I should have put this on the handout and I didn't. We have, of course, ASI, the Air Safety Institute, has personal minimums, easy to find. Just Google that. And I'll let you go, Pablo. Go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, so some of those minimums are different. So for example, for us, relatively speaking, sure, there's things change, but from about November to March, we're overcast. That's just the way it is. So a lot of things come into play there, right? So you're not just looking at the height and can I get under it and stuff like that. So you're looking at, is there moisture in the air? Is it just an overcast layer? Or, I mean, sometimes when you get up there, you start seeing the mist, right? The clouds are kind of, it's not just the solid deck of clouds, right? You get some of that stuff. So at the end of the runway, so we've got a 9,000, 10,000 foot runway, I think at this point. From one end to the other, it's 2 miles. I mean, there's a huge difference, and it sounds stupid. I know to the layperson or even a student maybe that hasn't flown much, it's 2 miles. The weather from one end to the other, specifically in Frederick, right,
Yeah.
can be totally different. It's not a 10,000 foot runway, so you have to know in your minimums. They're probably going to be higher in the winter. The decks, the ceilings have to be probably a lot higher. The temperatures, right? You got to put that in there because those personal minimums fall into the plane. So if I'm always training the same archer, then that personal minimum is going to be related to that plane as well. Am I going to fly it in 20 below, 10 below, 15 below, 20 below, snow, no snow, you name it. So there's a lot more that goes into pre-flight planning. And if you are a student, your 1.0 flight is going to be a 3-hour extravaganza, because if you're the first flight of the day, guess what? You better get there about 3 hours early to warm that plane up, plug it in, baby it, that kind of stuff. But it's all true. It's all true. It's not even to make fun of it. I mean, it's, planes fly better. There's better performance in cold weather, but there's also limits to those things. So
right, because that cold.
Yeah.
And so with the personal minimums, like I said, I'll just say again that the Air Safety Institute's got personal minimums. They have a contract you can write up. It helps kind of walk you through what to think about. You can work with that with your CFI or someone you trust that has experience. I would say too, though, that that's really important to do that. It helps making these decisions easier. And more importantly, if professional pilots, they have limits and they fly every day. And, as a GA pilot that doesn't fly every day for the vast majority of us, maybe it's like once, a couple times a month, whatever it might be. It's a good idea to develop some minimums to keep yourself safe. All right. Clothing, appropriate clothing. The big thing here, we don't have to go into a lot of detail here, but you want to be prepared that if something were to happen while you're flying, especially if you're going on a cross country and you have to land somewhere that's not at an airport and you might be stuck, you want to be prepared to survive in that. So you can't think, they said, I think that I've seen it before, don't dress for your destination, but dress for your trip. So dress for what you're flying over. So it's like, just because you're leaving someplace that could be relatively warm and you're flying through someplace cold and eventually getting someplace else warm, or just don't assume that you're just going to be landing and going into a building where it's nice and warm. Be prepared that if you have to put down, that you could survive out in the elements after that. And that's the same thing that goes along with the cold weather survival kit, things you might take with you. And that could be things like hot hands and some kind of shelter. It could be space blankets. They're very small, but they keep you warm. Things like that. Anything else you would recommend, Pablo, just in the sense of cold weather survival?
No, I think you're right with what you said there. I think probably more importantly in terms of the flight is probably just letting people know where you're going, right? Whether it be flight following, whether it be
Flight plan,
or even Heck, it could just be texting someone, hey, I'm about to take off and here's where I go.
Yep.
So just, because those things are important, especially out here. I mean, if I fly north, I'm in, just to go back a second with, with the flight, not the destination, is yesterday was -40 in Minnesota. So I probably just wouldn't have flown up there at all. But
I'm just going to say that's just wrong, by the way. I'm just going to put that out there. Okay.
It's just not right. Yeah. So there's a lot of things to take into account. I mean, most likely you're not going to jump into the plane in a pair of shorts, shirt, especially in the cold. But know that your heater could go out.
I've had that happen. I've had
Chris
that
and I both
happen.
have had that happen,
Yes.
and it's cold.
Way cold.
So there's a lot to take into consideration. No one's saying you have to go in there, with life rafts and duffel bags full of survival gear. That's not what we're saying. Just be prepared for what could happen.
Yeah. All right. By the way, there's a piece of survival equipment right there. That's happens to be Steven's AOPA bag. You wanted to take a selfie, and that's what he did right there. A selfie of Steven's AOPA bag. He's wearing it, and you can see he's very, very prominent in that picture, as
you
always.
can see a lot more of me that way.
All right. So let's say we get out to the airplane and we're starting to do our pre-flight. There are some things we really want to be aware of and checking. And one of the big things is frost. By the way, these photos, I have to say these photos, whoever took these photos of frost, they're quite amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean,
yeah.
what? Yeah, good picture.
Yeah. So you can see, you can clearly see on the airplane right there what it does to the top of the wing. And those are our airfoils. And you can see that looks almost like sandpaper. That really disturbs the airflow. So you do not fly. If there's frost on your airplane, do not fly the airplane unless you get it all cleaned off, if you're able to do that, or even if you get it de-iced to get the frost off, but do not go flying with frost on your wings. So that's really, really important. Pablo, I know this is something you've got experience with, because even when I was doing my flying in Arizona, believe it or not, we didn't have engine blankets. You want to talk to us a little bit about that, what the purpose of that is?
Sure. So I think if you look at that picture, it's kind of funny that even the prop is wrapped. That's a new one to me. I don't even know how you get that thing on there, but it looks like a gift.
That's a deluxe
I'd like to
model.
open the big one, please. So yeah, no. So I mean, those blankets, sure, you could put them on overnight and stuff, but they're not going to do much after a while, right? I mean, there's too many openings there, but those are essentially used. I know for us, I'm not going to blanket, no pun intended, make a statement on that one. But for us, it's a situation where, let's say I am training, I'm coming in, right? I preheated the plane appropriately. I've done all those things. I flew my hour and a half. I've landed, and again, the training aspect here is the one that really matters. Is it's cold out, so there's a student coming within the hour. You're going to get fueled up. They're going to do a pre-flight, all that stuff. That's when you put the blanket on to maintain the heat so that it doesn't cool off, and then an hour later you're doing it again. So that's what you're doing. And then most likely what you do is you grab and put the engine block, plug that in too. Because if you have the blanket, again, not a blanket statement, you're probably going to have an engine block heater because you're probably a cold weather flyer. So now,
just a question, assuming that the blanket, the blanket that's there, is that so you can actually check the oil without having to take the blanket off, I assume?
Exactly. And so the big thing there is don't be fooled by the engine block heaters. They don't warm it up to operating temperature. They just operate it enough to get the fluids going, and so that the aircraft isn't starting steel on steel, aluminum on aluminum. No, it's making it so things flow better. But specifically on a warmed up engine already, if you plug it in, that'll do wonders with that blanket.
Cool. All right, and then obviously there's some basic things. Just be careful if it's winter weather out there and you're going footing. Just be careful so you don't fall and hurt yourself. De-icing fluid I mentioned, you can get that. You can call the FBO if they've got that and get it. Be aware that it is expensive. De-icing fluid is not cheap, so just keep that in mind. But I want to reiterate, if there is ice or frost on your airplane, either get it de-iced if you're going to go, or do not fly. You've got to get the stuff off of there. Don't go try flying with that on there. Winterization kit. I know this is the part Pablo's already mentioned, kind of the preheat block heaters, but what about the winterization kit? What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so I mean, those are obviously good, and usually those are. It's not something you do pre-flight, post-flight kind of stuff. That winterization thing is something that happens in November-ish, late October, depending on what when you're expecting that first frost type thing. That's when you put in the cowl, the cowl flaps if you have them. change the oil. We always change the oil right around November. We'd go to a different viscosity. So, and depending on the plane itself, it's different, right? So Cirruses take different care and handling than some of the other planes. So yeah, so that's something that's more, not so much on the pilot, that's more on the organization, maybe the owners. You might be the owner, sure. So that's who owns the plane is going to take that into account. That's not something you do on a pre-flight.
Cool. And then, like I said, we already mentioned sort of doing the preheat and block heaters. Those are things you plug it in. You'll see the these airplanes that have the cord going to it, and that'll help it so that the oil is somewhat warm to move quickly through.
Yeah.
We mentioned
now
we have it on the
sorry, real quick on the wing. That's not just a little fuzzy layer. The wingtips had a little fuzzy layer, but if you notice, that's what's on the left picture. The right picture is the same wing, but call it 7-8 inches from that tip of that little fuzz there. It's quite thick.
I think you got crop circles on that thing. It looks like the aliens come visit. Maybe it's the alien ice thing. That's what it is.
I mean, it could be, but that was a very, very. I didn't fly that day, and someone did ask. I think on here is, can you de-ice wings with winter-grade windshield washer fluid?
I don't know, and I'm not gonna even remotely even go there to say.
That's the kind of thing that I think both of us aren't gonna look. You can do anything you want in that sense.
Are we gonna recommend it? No, not gonna recommend that at all.
No,
I have no idea. Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. Personally, I'm not going to take an ice scraper to the wing either.
All right.
Okay.
Bad idea.
Not gonna do that. Most likely, what you'll do is put it into a hanger if you can. If not, there's sun here, and it did melt eventually, but you could wipe some of it away, and that'll start the process.
And I've done that before.
Yeah, but
believe it or not, in Arizona,
take shortcuts. No kidding.
Oh yeah.
But don't take shortcuts is the thing. Look, it'll be ready when it's ready. Okay. Again, put it in the sun. Maybe start wiping some of it off, but don't take ice scrapers.
The sun helps a lot to get rid of it.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Especially in Arizona.
And then the pre-takeoff warm-up and oil temp. So what the thing you want to consider is plan on a little extra time. You're going to want to make sure that even before you start your run-up fully, to get that airplane up to proper operating, the oil temp up to a good engine temp, or to a good temp, a safe temp. Whether it's in the green, you probably can check your POH. It might have some guidance in there for you, but otherwise it might just default to get it in the green. So let it idle for a while, maybe just slightly idle a little bit higher to help it, but you just want to take it easy on the engine. You don't want to be putting it to full operating power before the oil's warmed up and the engine's warming up, because that's just going to hurt it. So big things there. Just be careful. All right, second time, what time we're looking at? We have got a little bit of time here left. Let's see if we can move through. The rest of them are a little shorter. I know that was a big slide. For in-flight considerations, obviously we know that even in the summertime you can get carb ice, but it can happen obviously in the wintertime too, induction icing, and whether it's carb ice that could happen inside, or you can even see in the picture there that you could get induction icing just from ice forming on the outside, and that can shut your engine off. Just getting, that's the air filter coming in. It's like, I don't know if that's a 172 or not, but that you can clearly see that that's where the air is coming in, the air intake. And if that gets iced up, you're not going to have any power. The engine's going to start to decline. Know the indicators for your airplane, whether that's if you're flying a fixed pitch prop and it's just the RPM starting to decrease, which happened to somebody that I work with, flying up in Arizona, believe it or not, again in the wintertime. Got that. And then carb heat and ice as well. So know what the indications is. If you're flying a constant speed prop, then it's going to be manifold pressure decreasing, and what to do, and if you can have any kind of features to turn on like carb heat to help get rid of that. Most GA airplanes do not have any kind of induction, like the induction icing for the air filter. So you just got to stay out of icing conditions. Okay. All right. Now, in-flight considerations, the other part is stay out of visible moisture when the temps are low, especially that range from 0 to -15. We always read about, that's where the icing typically will form. I was just reading though, well, you'll believe maybe where I read it, in Rob Machado's Instrument Pilot Handbook. He was talking that there's actually been observed icing, even in -40 degrees, there's been icing that's seen happen depending on that visible moisture. So it can happen if there's super cold water droplets. And the other part is, even at like 2 degrees Celsius, the aerodynamic cooling of the air going over the wing can actually take the surface of the wing or the airplane down below freezing. And if there's moisture, that can happen. I had this happen to me just flying here in Frederick one winter. There was an overcast layer. It was like 3,000 to 4,000 feet. And so I thought, well, we can't go up and do stalls or anything, but we can go out and do some ground reference and do some landings and stuff. So we flew over to the practice area. We had to go over a little bit of a ridge. And just in there was kind of this foggy looking stuff. And we started picking up ice. And so we just turned around and said, nope, not messing with that. And it wouldn't have seen that. There wasn't anything predicting that or showing that there was icing, just more that it can happen. So stay out of that stuff. Now, I know what we wanted to do here. On this airplane too, if you get icing, you can see this airplane is covered in ice. And notice too that this airplane had been flown, and you can see right here, we're gonna zoom in on that part. If you think your airplane's got de-icing, you know, because I got a defroster, well, that's what a defroster will do in the ice. So now you're trying to crouch down and like, how can you use your peripheral vision to land? Don't depend on airplanes that are not certified for flight into known icing conditions to be able to handle ice. Because even this airplane was fortunately able to get down. Imagine trying to land the airplane with that much visibility. So that's bad news right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you look for evidence of icing? Let's say you're flying and this is what happened to me in the sense of when I told you I went out to the practice area. I was vigilant because I knew that we had this overcast layer, and I was like, and I kept watching. And this is where you'll tend to see ice form on the small parts of the airplane first, because they get colder easier. The ice can start to adhere there. And so in this case, this is like a 172 strut. You can see ice forming along the front side of the wheel. It'll start forming along the strut, the wing struts, places like that. That's where you want to look. And if you see anything like that, get yourself out of that immediately. You don't want to be messing with that. So just really, really be careful. In flight, again, take care of the engine, as Pablo mentioned. It's like the engine gets cold, it's going to be hard on it, and we don't want the engine to have damage happen to it, or even worse, for it to fail. So if you have cowl flaps, say you're flying something like a 182 or any like typically a more high performance engine that's got cowl flaps, probably want to keep those closed and really monitor the cylinder head temp or the engine temp for that. So keep them. You're not going to probably open them up like you might normally on a climb. You might want to close them part way or keep them closed to keep the engine warm. And then when you're descending, think about it, cool it slowly. Maybe you're going to come down a little slower than you would normally, keeping some engine power on to keep the engine warm, because pulling at the idle, like you might do, and just like sort of diving for the deck or whatever that you might get away with in the summertime is not going to work well in the winter, because you could really shock cold the engine and do damage to it. So bad idea. One thing I wanted to mention here was that if you do get yourself into, you encounter stuff that wasn't forecast, or get yourself into a situation, inadvertently, where you start to get ice, do not be afraid to get what you need from ATC. I've had this happen several times, and it was when I was flying freight. I was flying when I first started, I flew a Piper Lance, and that airplane's not certified for icing conditions. And so the forecast has shown that I should be able to stay below where I needed to be. And as I was going in, it's happened to me a couple of times, but as I was going in, one time going into Tucson, Arizona, and the cloud deck was coming down lower than it was forecast, and I had to keep descending, and I was on an instrument flight plan. I was not going to go into it because I started just in it. I could see the ice form, and I immediately went down, and ATC was getting on my case, like, you need to get up to altitude. I'm like, I can't go up higher. There's ice up there. And I remember them saying, it's like, well, I can't authorize you. I'm like, look, I can see the airport. I'm going to stay down here. And I just told them what I needed to do. And, I didn't get in trouble or anything else. But you just have to be clear. Don't be afraid to say, no, I can't do that. I've got ice here. I am not flying into it because you've got a minimum altitude. I said, I have a visual with the airport. I am okay. It wasn't like I was flying in 2 miles visibility. It was clear, but it was just this overcast layer that had this ice in it. And I was like, I'm not messing with it. Just don't be afraid. Just really, it's hard to do, but that's kind of where I know I really learned it. It was in those conditions of just tell them what you need and then just be adamant. And then the last part, I believe, is on approach and landing. If you have picked up ice, hopefully you stayed out of it and avoided it in the first place. But if you have somehow picked up ice, be aware that you could experience things like a tail stall. So the ice is going to form, as I mentioned, on the smaller parts of the airplane. It will pick up on the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer first. That can cause the airfoil over that part to be disformed and not flow as like it should. And so a tail stall, unlike a normal stall where the nose is going to drop, or you're going to see, what you're going to see then is the tail is going to come up. It's going to stall, and that provides our tail down force. So instead of pushing forward to recover from a normal stall, on a tail stall, you actually have to pull back. It's the opposite, because you're trying to increase angle of or get the angle of attack to counteract, because remember, the tail acts with tail down force. It pushes the tail down. And so we're going to try to keep it. What do you do? Higher approach speeds, what you want to think about, maybe coming a little quicker to help avoid stalls, especially a tail stall from happening. The airplane's going to be heavier, so you're going to have a longer rollout. The condition could be icy or wet, and that's going to make your rollout longer, and you could even get icing on your brakes. So really be careful. I've had it happen landing in winter conditions where the airplane will start to slide. So just make sure you've got a nice big long runway. Be careful, cautious, try to go someplace where it's clear.
Well, and most of our 737s will see that with the camera that's on that landing gear. So yeah, next time I fly it, I'll make sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you take for. That's for those moderate cross country trips. All right,
exactly right.
I think the last thing we got on here.
Real quick, one of the things I was going to mention, I know we're short on time there, but a couple slides ago when you were talking about don't be afraid to what was it? Don't be afraid to get what you need from ATC. You'd mentioned also known icing and stuff like that. So that's where that word Fiki comes from. And there's different variations of it. And so some planes you'll see have the weeping wings. Those aren't necessarily all Fiki airplanes or flight in known icing. So they're not approved for that.
Right.
So you have to specifically see that and or know that the airplane is Fiki approved.
Right.
Because there are different kinds of wings that do that. So a lot of Cirrus have the weeping wings, but they're not Fiki airplanes. Right. So that's if you get ice, start to see ice, you take advantage of it by turning that on to get rid of it, but you're supposed to get out of the icing conditions
as soon as possible. Yeah, right away.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So.
And if you're flying it, if you are going to fly an airplane that's is certified Fiki for flight in known icing conditions, I would go fly with somebody that's experienced in it so you learn how to use it properly as well, because you don't want to just be playing around with it or whatever. So,
I mean, yeah, because it's a limited amount of fluid in there too. You just turn it on and say I'm done.
Like let's say you get into a bearing or something that maybe it has boots on the wings or things like that. You want to learn how to use all that stuff properly. Okay, the last bit here before we can get to our the wrap up is just I wanted to, and there is a link to this. I have an AOPA link, and I think I've got a bold method link. The bold method article was just too good to pass up. Normally I try to use the AOPA stuff, but the bold method was a really good one too. It's a nice brief summary, but the braking reports just changed back in, I think it was 2016 or so. So it's been around for a little bit now, but you're going to see, and I'm going to show you a report here in just a second, but the higher the number is better. 6 is dry, and then it works its way down. 5 is, you can see frost, wet. This may be difficult to see. This graphic is in both the bold method article, and there's a link to in the AOPA article that gets you to the FAA advisory circular. And so the lower the number, the slipperier, the harder it is, the more dangerous it is to land. So let me just show you what it looks like on a report. So you might get a report where ATC might say that the FICON is 553, whoops. This is telling you the thirds of the runway, the initial third, middle third, and last third. And so 5.5, that's pretty good. That's just below dry, but 3 is getting more into you might have some braking issues. And then it says 25%, 1/8 inch dry snow. 25%, this is the runway parts again, is 1/8 inch dry snow, and then the 50%, which is the last part there, is 2% in 2 inches dry snow. So just letting you know what the conditions are. So check out those articles, go into way more detail. I think those will be useful for you. And the links are on the handout for you. And that brings us to the official wrap before we take more questions. Stephen, did you want to mention at all anything about the AOPA app and pilot passport?
Passport is a feature within the AOPA app. It's got a bunch of information about local airports. If you have your GPS stuff turned on, it does try to pick the closest one to you. And there are some badges involved with checking in different airports around the country. Earn you some points. Our marketing folks monitor that, and they do some little contests for points and stuff like that throughout the year as well. And we have a special badge if you're attending our webinar that gets you, I think it's 1,000 points for checking in today. Pretty easy to get to. Once the app loads up, there's a menu, a button for the pilot passport, and there should be a section to enter a code there, one of our vendor codes, and that should get you set up.
I'm assuming this code works for even people that might be watching the recording. Unlike Wings Credit, which is only for people attending live, this code, if you're watching this recorded as well, you can probably go ahead and put that in and get the credit for watching the show today.
Yes, it does have, I think, about a month expiration date. So they make it available, and about 30 days later, it'll stop working. But they do have a little bit of time.
Okay, so you got a little bit of time. Hopefully you're watching it sooner rather than later and can take advantage of that. Okay, and there is the pilot code, or the pilot passport code again. And I guess we wanted to mention it. Actually, I think we have something. Let me just go back. Yeah, I wanted it to hit this again. So there's the pilot. We'll come back to this one in a second, leave that up while we answer questions. But just as the quote unquote official end of our webinar, we will stick around and answer questions. But for next month, February 24th, 2022, 12 to 1 Eastern, we are doing tech solutions for your New Year's resolutions. We thought this would be kind of fun, the new year, and we're going to talk about gear, new things that are around, some tech, but also gear. We're going to talk about tech and gear, things that are new and things that we found useful. And we're going to have a special guest on from Sporty's Pilot Shop. John Zimmerman, who is a vice president over there, is going to join us and chat with us about that and maybe share some cool new stuff they've got. And I know each of us are going to talk about things that we've found useful in the cockpit as well, some tech and gear that we think is pretty cool. Don't forget, we've got scholarships available. I know somebody asked about it before. There it is, aopa.org/scholarships. And so there are the things there. So if you know anybody that might be interested, you got until February 11th to get those in. But please, those high school ones for both teachers and students, they do require the written test to be done. So that's kind of a little bit of a challenge, but check those out. So there it is, aopa.org/scholarships. You can also just Google AOPA scholarships. This thing will come up right away too. It's pretty easy. All right.
Yep. And real quick, well, actually, I'll get to it in a second. Continue.
That's it. I just wanted to go ahead, and do you have any questions or anything else you wanted to mention?
Awesome. And remember, bring your friends.
For the scholarships?
Well, one of the things we talked about last year too is possibly this year just giving away more stuff. You know, everyone loves the AOPA stuff. So I think we should still try to do that, and I think we will. So
I think it's a good idea.
I think it'll be fun. Okay, great. So let's do some of these questions here. All right. Oh, and somebody, and I don't know which acronym they were talking about, but I was saying Fiki, and you were saying FICON. Now, Fiki is Foxtrot India, K India.
Yes.
So Fiki, and just put the words together: flight into known K icing. There you go.
And then the FICON, if I go back here, let me go back. Oops. To this, FICON is listed in here, and it stands for Field Condition Report. So that's what that's about. That's a report you're going to get for braking. It's going to be in that winter weather. You can see this is Denver, runway 17 right, field condition report, and then they tell you about the runway condition for braking and what the conditions are with those new numbers from the thing that I mentioned. There's a link, 2 links, an AOPA article that also links to the advisory circular from the FAA, and there's that bold method article, which I thought was really good as well. So check those out.
Yeah, and actually, this isn't me. Okay, actually, someone's asking to put the scholarship slide up again while I mention this. Thank you, Jason. I forgot what I was going to say. That's ridiculous.
So,
yeah, I forgot.
Scholarship. Yep. Okay. Do we have another question while you think about that, and we'll come back to it?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions. So, yeah, let's get to it. So, now these I'm strictly asking because I don't know this one in particular. So maybe you know, Chris. If we don't know, we can find out for you, or we can Google it. Do you know at what temperature 100 low lead freezes?
No, I don't know that. That's interesting.
Great question, right?
Pretty darn cold.
Yeah.
I bet somebody in the audience might know that.
Definitely, they know everything. Okay, 100 low lead, according to the airlineacademy.com, freezes at an incredibly low minus 58 Celsius.
Yeah, woo, that's pretty cold. Negative 72 Fahrenheit.
Yes. Wow. Okay, and for those of you that are going to ask, well, what does jet fuel do? Jet fuel freezes at an incredible minus 43 Celsius, minus 45 Fahrenheit.
So it freezes before avgas, huh?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So there you go. Now that's fascinating. Thank you for whoever asked that, because I actually never thought about it, but there it is. So it would have been good not to fly into Minnesota yesterday.
I don't think I'd go outside if it was that cold, honestly.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Much less go flying.
Oh, that's right. Do NOTAMs give which runways are plowed if flying in IFR at night. Now, for me, I wouldn't even go that far. I would just say, do no attempts, give which runways are plowed, right? I mean, that's just, I don't care when I'm flying, I want to know.
That would depend on the airport operator. Usually what they're going to do is and this is based on, I'd have to do like digging into research, but my experience and just the stuff I remember, typically what they're going to do is they're going to notate them closed if they're closed. So it's like the assumption would generally be, and I'm going to give you an assumption, and then I'm going to tell you what I think is practical. The assumption would be that if it's not NOTAM closed, then it's likely open. Now, what happens though, that if the snow came after the airport was, probably closed operating hours wise, well, then it's anybody's guess, probably not plowed, right? So might not want to do it. The other thing you might want to do is, the best practice to do is call the airport, talk to the airport operator, or the whomever there, and find out from them before you go. This part of that pre-flight planning if it's going to happen. But yeah, it's like if there's no tower, it's a non-towered field, or the tower's closed and the airport operations are closed for the day, who knows? And especially if the weather started since then, it's probably not going to be clear.
Yeah.
Nor will there
remember
nobody's there.
I wish I could remember what I was going to say. I don't remember. So let's get to the rest of them here. Okay, this is a good one based on your one of the last ones you were talking about, a tail stall. How do you know for sure it's the tail stall as opposed to a regular stall without looking out the back window?
Without looking at, so the difference is going to be, you're going to feel like, the way a normal stall feels, you'll feel it on the wings, and I've never had one. I'm just basically, because luckily I've never had one. I did talk to somebody that had one though, and so you'll normally feel it in the controls, and you'll kind of feel the wing. You can kind of feel where the normal wing one is. The tail one is going to be different in the sense you're going to lose that down force, and they say that it feels different. Like you're going to kind of feel the fact that it's coming from the tail rather than the wings. The big part is just knowing that you're in icing conditions. Is also the recovery too, right? So it's like if it happens, pulling back is going to help rather than pushing forward or releasing back pressure the way we would in a normal stall. So the big part is just knowing if you're in these icing conditions. I will relay a story. I am not saying that this is the best way to handle it, but there was a guy that I spoke with, a fellow freight pilot. He flew Cessna Caravans out in California, and he got into some icing conditions. And in Caravans, they have a lot of surface area there that can pick up ice. And he got into icing conditions, and he started experiencing a tail stall, and he wasn't sure what to do. And and it's a joke in one sense, but he said, I did what every good Cessna pilot does when something like that happens. I let go, and the aircraft recovered itself. So he kind of released the back pressure he was holding and just let it do it. But to get out of the tail stall, you're going to have to pull back. If you want to read more about that, I'm sure we've got some stuff on the Air Safety Institute. Just Google that. Unfortunately, I didn't think about that when I was prepping the handout. I would have put that in there for you. But I know we've got information on AOPA about it.
I remember now because of you. Thank you. This is what I was going to say because it was pertinent at the time, and now that you've mentioned it's pertinent yet again. This is not me. This is actually one of our wonderful listeners has mentioned that AOPA has a great article, his words, by Mike Bush on cold weather ops. He noted something about the oil. It's not just the oil, but because of the different metals and different expansion coefficients, I'll leave it at that, cold weather ops are important. So I don't know where I should add it, but it is in the questions that someone asked. Suffice to say, look for Mike Bush, cold weather ops. I think it's savvy maintenance, crimes and misdemeanors. Actually, it's from April of 2019. So that's what I was going to mention. And it's good. From what I understand, that's what they've been saying. So what do you think about heated props, Chris? John wants to know.
What do I think about them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're helpful.
Like them.
I mean, right?
Yeah, they're very helpful. I had them when I was flying. I flew a Piper Chieftain and then a Beech 99, and both of those had heater props, and they're great because it's like, of course, you're going to typically see those things on airplanes that are probably certified for flight and the known icing, and usually it's on the root of it. It's got a little it looks like a little black rubber or whatever, but yeah, they're great. It's like if you have them, then that's one way to get rid of this because it's amazing to me. Because I did fly through ice when I was doing that stuff, and it was amazing to me where ice will form. Like you wouldn't think, how's it going to form on the prop? It's spinning so fast, but it does. It very much forms on the prop. And I know guys talking about the 99. It didn't happen to me in the 99, but it's a twin, and so the props are back by you, and the ice would fling off the propellers and smack the side of the airplane, and so they had it reinforced where that would happen.
Yeah. Wow. Will you please go back to the slide with the passport code? So we're getting a lot of passport questions, so just leave it on the passport.
Got it.
We can go into it at the end of this if we run out of questions. We don't have as many questions as usual, so we can talk about that later. We have a lot of those. Okay. So a METAR, someone asks, does it use an averaging of the last several reports?
The METAR? Does it use the averaging of the last? No. The METAR is going to be just for that hour, what they observe at that time. The only thing that you may see that might be different than at that moment, or those, you know, what they're kind of seeing is if they're seeing trends changing happening within that hour, then what they're going to do is that, for example, like let's say that the snow began halfway through the hour, they'll put things like snow began, it's in the remarks section, they'll put remarks in it, snow began and ended, or what we're seeing, that sort of stuff. But no, it does not average it. Typically it's going to be something right around that moment that they do that. And then they'll put in the remarks if there's anything significant. The way you'll see the trends is by watching, like looking back at the past METARs. You can go back and find those.
Cool.
By the way, I did find an article from AOPA about tail stalls. I'm going to put that into the chat.
They're a pretty good source from what I hear.
There we go. I just threw that into the chat. There's a link, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll update that onto the handout, and we'll replace the one that's in there with it later.
Hey, Chris, can you go back real quick to the GFA and the Airmet map? Someone wanted to know the difference, and I think just visually the difference will stand out.
Okay, so let's go to the Airmet.
The Graphical Airmet and the GFA.
Yep, so here's the Graphical Airmet you can find, and you can see the big thing to look at is to really help you see the difference is look up here at the menu. This is just going to be Airmets, that's it. And it's just going to show you the Airmets and let you toggle through the different types of Airmets. You'll see that the interface is very similar, but that's going to be the big part. When we go to look at the GFA, you'll notice here that now I can toggle all these other different things up here. And so I can pick the biggest part. It's kind of, this is the one part I thought was a little counterintuitive. They put the forecast and observation warning below, which then changes the categories above. I think if I was designing it, would have put it the opposite way. But so if I click on forecast, I get all these forecast products here. So TAFs, ceiling visibility before clouds, thunderstorm forecast, so on. And then if I click on the observation warning button here, then it's going to come up with things like you can see METARs and all the observation type things. And then I can zoom in and out of the map. So notice the difference is that I've got this thing where I can change the times of the forecast, where I can look over the what's coming up. So it's different in that sense. The menu looks similar, but you're gonna have these different buttons and they'll do different functions. Whereas the other one's focusing literally just on Airmets, and I think they've got one for SIGMETs and other products like that. Biggest thing is go to the website, aviationweather.gov, and check it out, just play around. And then one thing I did want to mention, I should have done it on the screen cap, is that when you go to aviationweather.gov and you're using these products, up here where I've got the mouse circling, if you can see that, there's a button that says info. Great button. If you're ever wondering, you want to get more information about the products, click on that info button. It'll take you to like their website, or it'll give you some background on whatever product you happen to be looking at. So it's a really great, well-designed website. I love it.
Cool. We're getting a lot of questions now. They're starting to come in now. Now we got the serious people here. Thank you for that. Okay, so here's another one. Should you turn on pitot heat anytime the temp is at or near freezing, even without visible moisture? Now, I think this is specific to airplanes because I know pitot heat is something that, actually, no, not pitot heat. Carb heat, sorry. Yeah, so he says that he's flown a Cirrus with the Garmin perspective that advises this on the PFD.
Well, and I guess you check the manual too. I'm not going to ever say, if the manufacturer is saying do it, then just do it. That's what they're recommending is probably the better idea. But let's say that I'm talking like flying in a Cessna. I don't recall right now. I have to go back and look more carefully in the manual. But yeah, let's say you're flying in daytime conditions. It's below freezing, but there's not a cloud in the sky. I'm not going to turn the pitot heat on more than like, it's like there shouldn't be any icing. However, if I'm flying at night, or it's like, especially, and typically the pitot is going to be used when you're flying instrument stuff where you're going into the clouds. But if I'm flying at night, or if I'm flying during the daytime, and like I had it happen when I flew over to the practice area, I was in the clear, right? But there's obviously some visible moisture happened and started picking up ice. So in that case, yeah, I'm going to turn the pitot heat on, or in anticipation. And obviously, if you're going to be flying into the clouds, where it's like, and you're clearly staying out of where there should be icing conditions, where it's not forecast and the temperature's all good, but yeah, you can turn it on then, just as a preventive mechanism.
Cool. And then thoughts on running engine. Now, this one I wasn't quite sure what he meant about engine heating system continuously between flights or just an hour or so before. I'm thinking he's thinking of the engine block heaters that you plug in.
And that would be, what do you think, Pablo?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I think you should plug it in for sure. I mean, and I'm talking about extreme temperature. I'm not talking 30 degrees or something, right? If you're going to take an hour or so between flights, whatever, if you have a hangar, that kind of stuff. But I'm talking more extreme temperatures, like specifically stuff like yesterday. But when we're under freezing all of the time, and then at night it gets to 0, yeah, I mean, the last thing you want is, going from operating temperatures falling all the way back to 0, and then up and 0, and then, I mean, you're an extreme amount of damage to the engine if you're doing that constantly. So here's the other thing: why not plug it in? It's not going to hurt the engine, because like I said, it doesn't heat it to 600 degrees. That's not what it does. It just helps maintain things warm so that they don't cool off completely, and then it makes engine starting and damage less likely.
There you go. That sounds like good advice to me.
Yep. Okay. Someone has follow-up. Just didn't know. Oh, TKS. They wanted to know if you knew of any situations of environmentally friendly TKS, because he was asking if there was if they were environmentally unfriendly. I don't know. I told them it's alcohol based.
Yeah,
Sure, there's other chemicals in it. I don't know. And by the way, for those out there that have never seen TKS, have you ever felt TKS? I'm sure you have, Chris.
I have not felt TKS. I've dealt with the stuff I flew had boots and heated elements and all that sort of stuff. I felt icing fluid, and that's gross. I actually got it sprayed on me once by accident.
TKS is clear, and these are the ones we put in our Cirruses.
Yeah, I know the weeping wing thing, right?
Incredibly dangerously slick. I'm telling you right off the bat. You get those nice hangar floors with the epoxy. If some of that falls on there and you don't see it, especially if you have a weeping wing and it's after you've flown, you will fall. It is like ice. It is unbelievably slick. So be careful with that. Clean it up as soon as it drips. Clean it up, because it's bad stuff. All right.
I just tried Googling and I didn't see anything that came up, but I did, obviously did it very quickly there. I didn't see anything. So unfortunately, I'm not familiar.
Okay. And Barry, thank you for reiterating. He just posted TKS is slippery. It's not on a doorknob. Thank you.
There it is.
Yeah. Need I say more? Thank you, Barry. Okay. Flying at night, particularly on an IFR clearance, always good to have a flashlight to eliminate wings, struts, tires, to look for icing.
Yes. Great advice. Great advice. Definitely, because that's how you can remember. I was talking about in the daytime being able to see it. Having a flashlight you can put out there, a nice bright one too, that you can put out there and take a look and watch for it. Absolutely good advice.
Okay. So not a lot of questions. I've asked all the questions that I had here. Oh, anything about electronics and cold weather? How are they affected? That's what I said. I feel like in my car they're affected. Now, granted, I've had this car for like 10 years now, and it's like the colder it gets, now the speakers start to crackle for the first 20 minutes in the car, and nothing comes out of them, no noise or sound, and then all of a sudden it warms up, and then the radio actually comes on. So that leads me to believe that yes, it could just be wear and tear, right? But I think the cold definitely affects those leads and connections and everything. But that's all I know.
Maybe just probably good advice there would be, and again, I don't know specifically. I had an airplane I used to fly that the radios work really well except when it rained, which is kind of when I needed it the most. But the thing I would say is maybe just another reason to get the airplane nice and warm before you go take off. Make sure everything's working correctly, and because the engine's warming up, you're going to have cabin heat working as well. So
yeah. All right. So Philip's been a great contributor today. I will point that out. Another good one: is there a good procedure to set up a tail stall in order to practice recognition? I like that one.
Unfortunately, maybe in a simulator you could do that, but I don't know that there's a way to do it, because the reason that the tail stall happens is that the air is disrupted over the horizontal stabilizer in the elevator, and so then what's going to happen is when you go to apply the elevator like you would normally, it's going to then disrupt the airflow, just like it would be when we think about disrupting the airflow of the wing. The ice has screwed up your horizontal stabilizer, your tail surfaces. I want to recommend that link that I just threw into the chat there. Hopefully everybody was able to see that. It does talk about how to recover, but yeah, I don't know of any way that you could simulate that other than in a simulator. You might get a sim where it'll let you put ice on the tail and do it that way, and then you can practice it.
You know, in all honesty, that's probably the best place to practice it.
Yes.
I mean, there's things that,
and,
you know.
And let me not discount the fact that I have done, and I think we did one on emergency procedures some time back, and I talked about the sim is amazing when you especially get one that's got the full features. I know that we have one that's based on X-Plane, and that thing, the emergencies that you could do in that are incredible. Control surface failures, all kinds of stuff. So it was amazing how many options were in there. So.
And then I think we kind of went past this one, but the carb heat for icing, better to run partial carb heat all the time or go full on and off every so often?
I would say that if you think that you're in the conditions where it might happen, just pull it on. Just like why are we fooling around with it, this partial stuff? So just pull it all the way on if you think you're in conditions where it might be conducive to that.
Okay. Wow. Can you get carb ice on the ground?
Yes. You could get carb ice on the ground because it just has to be in the conditions where it could be the forming in the carburetor, right? So it's possible. Now, I've never had that happen. I suppose it could happen. And then the other thing I know is that generally for operating purposes, we don't pull the carb heat onto the ground because it's unfiltered air. And so now the prop potentially is blowing dirt into the engine, into the intake, or other things into the intake, and it's unfiltered going right into the engine. So typically we don't use carb heat on the ground, but yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't be able to form. Just never had it happen. So I guess just keep the engine warm for the time being, and then do your run up.
Okay, yeah, someone agrees there. So it's either on or off as needed. It's up to you. Okay. Oh wow! So Ken says there are several systems that let you turn on your plane's black heater remotely with your cell phone.
That's getting fancy now.
That's not a 1980 Piper Archer. I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah, you might even you might even be able to get one of those robot lawnmower things then too.
That's exactly right. So yeah, we're getting a lot of statements more than anything. So I could go into all of those, but it's just, you know, they either agree or add in their own, you know, kind of, hey, this is what I always do. So I like that. Thank you so much.
Cool.
I think we're probably done at this point. If not, oh, somebody said, what are your thoughts on using Prist? Really not. Gallery right there.
Yeah, that's getting more into the, yeah, I can't say that I know enough about it to be able to speak with any sort of authority. So unfortunately, we need Jamie.
All right. So on that note, yes, we do. On that note, thank you so much. 12:22. We're 8 minutes early today, so I appreciate everyone's help. I would like to hear from Dale, and I'll just leave it at that to see why he had those thoughts today. Other than that, we're good. Chris, put up the slide for the next one, please, if you wouldn't mind, for February 24th. Let everyone know when it is and what we'll be covering. So tech solutions for New Year's resolutions. So we're going to be talking to, I'll just leave it, and I don't know if you said it earlier, but a tease, as they call it in the business, a big company representative will be with us to represent this, and we'll have a guest on the show. So looking forward to that. Maybe we'll give something away. I don't know. Just dropping that seed right now.
We'll throw that idea out there when we do our planning session there.
Right after, let all your friends know. Okay, thank you, Chris. Stephen, play us out, would you?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.